What's up, everybody?
What's up, guys?
Welcome to Tuesday Talks with me and Austin. Since everybody is quarantined right now, we were trying to figure out a way to be able to hang out with all of you and keep everybody up to date. And so we decided, hey, let's get online.
Good option.
So tonight we are going to be kind of introducing the new normal for everybody while we're in this this kind of season of quarantining and stuff like that. So if you guys have questions, you can definitely jump in on the chat and let us know what's going on. Glad to have several of you on right now watching. That's awesome. Especially big shout out to Grace Fusen and Killian Goodrich. Happy birthday. So that's pretty exciting. So the new normal.
New normal. This is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, hanging out, playing some board games, doing puzzles.
Yeah, lots of puzzles.
Yeah.
Teaching Easton Monopoly.
That's right. If you have not done a lot of working out yet, get in those reps, right?
Yeah. You come over. I'm not scared. You can come over.
That's
I
right.
have a garage.
So at some point we should definitely show everybody that setup because that would be awesome.
Yeah, I can show on behind the scenes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we have posted out. You probably got an email today. It's now live on our Facebook page as well, and it'll be posted out to our Cornerstone app soon. But there is a picture we're going to show you guys of our new weekly schedule.
Yeah.
So here is what our weekly activities are going to look like here for the next few weeks at least.
Until things change.
That's right.
Yeah.
So Sunday is pretty simple. We have worship for Sunday morning with the entire church. It's streamed on online, and so we want to encourage everybody to watch that 10:30, and definitely get out there and get to study along with Pastor Bill, sing along with Pastor Chris as he leads in some worship, and that's just a great time for us to be able to worship and be able to take a rest from the week.
Then on Monday, we're going to have a weekly challenge. We'll publish that every Monday morning, what it's going to be. Just something fun to keep you guys doing something. Ask you to take a video of it, probably. Put a hashtag out there. Just keep you guys engaged. Just something fun to do. And then we're also going to be releasing a video every Monday called Monday Minute, in which we kind of profile or just get either a devotional thought or an update from a church planner, missionary, pastor, just somebody who is going to share something, and you guys get to hear a voice other than me or Scott at that time. Yeah,
and that's going to be really cool to get to highlight some of our ministry connections, people that are out on the front lines, maybe church planners or something along those lines. So that's going to be a really cool thing to be able to do, and you guys can check in regularly and know that on Monday that's going to come out.
Yeah, especially right now, because I would say what we're doing in South Carolina is a lot different than what everybody else is kind of dealing with around the country right now. So in Pennsylvania and in Washington State, where places are on complete lockdowns and they're in shelter in places, just to be able to get updates and see what they're going through and what their rhythm is like, and just kind of see how they're still ministering to their people, and just kind of what they're going through and how this is affecting them is going to be interesting during this time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of what's going to be going on Mondays. Tuesday, as you can see, is what we're doing right now, Tuesday Talks. This will be a time where Austin and I will get to come and present a lesson and kind of study through a portion of the Bible. We're going to be doing a new series during this time, which we're pretty excited about. called Written in Stone, and it's going to be all about the Ten Commandments and kind of what all they mean for us. I mean, what's the big deal about the Ten Commandments?
Yeah.
So that's kind of Tuesdays.
Then Wednesday, we're going to have hangout times. We're going to do Zoom chat. So what you need to do is, we're going to post a link or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or give you instructions. You need to download Zoom. We're going to have Wednesday hangouts for middle school. Is going to be at 7 p.m. And then high school is going to be at 8 p.m. These are only going to be about 30 to 40 minutes each, to where we can all get online at the same time, see each other. It's just a big virtual hangout for Zoom chats. So those are going to be every week, 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. And what we're going to do is just kind of have a hangout and a social time, but also use that to follow up on what me and Scott are talking about tonight on Tuesday.
Yep. And I had a couple of people ask, why are we doing it on Tuesdays?
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is so we can have not journey groups, but so that we can have a time to be able to hang out and talk through some of those things on Wednesday, which all the high school journey groups already do on Wednesdays usually. So we wanted to do that on Tuesday and not do a second message on Sunday. It kind of breaks it up throughout the week for us. So we're going to do Tuesday talks, and then Wednesday we'll have those Zoom chats. This week's links were already emailed out, so if you have not got that, you can definitely reach out to me and Austin or Miss Amy, and we can get that link to you. It'll be a fresh link each week. So you'll need to be paying attention to those kinds of things. We won't post it publicly because we don't want just anybody jumping on that link and videoing in with us. But we do want to encourage you to be involved in that. Come ready to ask some questions, to hang out, and just have a good time together.
Yeah, and if I can go back, one thing we forgot to say is on Tuesdays, call somebody. Like, call your grandma, call your grandpa. Call somebody who is maybe in one of those vulnerable positions or immunosuppressed or somebody that's not getting out much. Even if they are getting out, call them anyway. Just call and talk to them. They'd probably love to hear from you. I talked to my grandma and grandpa this over the weekend, and they were just happy to hear from me. They're not getting a lot of people. I know a lot of my family that lives around them right now is staying away from them for their safety. So give them a call on, I don't know, I'm calling mine every Tuesday. So give them a call on Tuesday. Then you finish with Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay. Then on Thursday, we're going to do a behind the scenes every week. Somebody's going to go live on Instagram and just kind of show you what life is like behind the scenes right now and just in general. So I'm going to go first on Thursday, where I'm going to go live on Instagram between 4 and 5 o'clock. Just walk you around my house, or if I'm doing something at that time, just give you a look at what I'm like when I'm not speaking at Ascend on Sunday nights, because I know for most of you, that's still the only time you really see me much is at Ascend on Sundays. So that's less than 2% of what I do and who I am. So I'm going to give you a kind of look at who I am, what I do, my family. You'll probably see Easton on there. I feel like I talk about him at least once a week because he just gives me sermon illustration one after another. So you'll get to see him. You'll see Amy. Scott will do some. We'll do some leaders. We'll just kind of show you what life is like, and you guys get to know us a little bit more.
Yeah. And that's just a cool thing for us to be able to highlight a couple of different people, especially during this time, and give you a chance to see some of those things that are going on. We also talked about potentially even like showing some of the stuff that's going on at the campus at Cornerstone. Since you guys aren't getting to see, there's actually a lot going on campus with construction.
Workers are still working.
Yep, definitely. So, hang out with us during that time. That's going to be really cool. All right. Another thing that we'll do on Thursday, we're going to give you guys the movie of the week. And so this will be a movie that's available on Netflix. It'll change each week. And then Friday, we will do a live movie trivia. And so we'll work out some questions that will be based on the movie, make you pay attention a little bit, and get to talk together about that. Maybe do some prizes or something like that.
Yeah, we'll figure something out.
That'd be cool. So, that'll be announced this week as well. And all of these things, we really want to remind you, they're going to be available through our social media. And so if you have Facebook, Instagram, follow those those handles so that you can actually see and keep up.
So when we go live for the behind the scenes stuff, are we going to be doing that from the student ministry Instagram, or are we going to be doing that from our personal Instagrams?
I don't know. Maybe we switch it up.
All right, we'll switch it.
Do some different things. Yeah.
Because we're not going to be giving that account out willy-nilly.
Well, the Cornerstone ones,
yeah,
they can follow out here. Cool. If you don't have Insta, so sorry, you're not going to be able to participate in a couple of things. But you can talk to your parents, see if you can use their phone to keep up, and to do some of the challenges, because some of the challenges may have a video or take a picture doing something, find something. So that'll be cool.
Yeah, I think Easton's going to be my designated challenge demonstrator.
Nice.
So it's going to be fun. We're going to make him famous.
So on Fridays, we'll be doing that movie trivia, and we'll also be doing some prayer prompts. If you've been following our Facebook page, we've already posted a few of these. So get into that, and it's just an opportunity for you to have a verse to kind of challenge you, and then a question that gets you ready to pray about what that psalm is talking about.
And then on Fridays, we're going to release either I'll either describe a scenario, or we'll just put that out on Saturdays, put out a scenario, really just asking like, what would you do, especially in this time where everybody's facing something like this for the first time. I certainly never thought I would be quarantined in my house and the government would basically be shutting places down for weeks on end. But just a scenario where I kind of set the scene for you, build a scene, and then finish up with what would you do, and just give you something to think about. How would you respond? How would you do different things in different situations? Sometimes they're going to be serious. Sometimes they're going to be fun. Sometimes they're going to be funny. But just make you think about it, talk about it, get with your friends, ask them, after you read the scenario, think about it, then text and call your friends. Ask them, what would you do? How would you respond? And things like that.
Yeah. And that's an easy way to kind of bring up so that you can invite your friends to watch along with you.
Yeah.
And then have some good conversations after the facts.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So that's kind of our weekly schedule on a regular basis that we'll be going out. Should we tease out the movie for this week?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay.
We'll give you guys the movie this week. We'll give you a head start, so you have until Friday to watch it.
Okay, so this week's movie is going to be Miracle.
One of the best movies ever made.
Okay, so I've not seen this movie.
Oh, it's fantastic.
But I've heard great things from you. Give just a little bit of an overview of what's going on.
Ooh, okay. It's the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, and they were the underdogs. They were made of just ragtag college players. I don't want to say ragtag. They were the best college players, but they were made up of college players to go play in the Olympics against obviously the rest of the world, and then they run into Russia, who hasn't lost a game in like 20 years or something. If you know the story, it's absolutely incredible. It's one of the best moments in sports history, definitely in American sports history. But it's one of the best movies with the best speech. And then after you watch that speech, what you need to do is you need to go on YouTube and search for little kid giving the Herb Brooks speech at Fenway. This little kid, he goes in and the coach gives this speech in the locker room to the team right before they take the ice against Russia. Well, this little kid, he's like 4 or 5 years old. He memorized that speech, and then he gave it in Fenway Park right before the Red Sox played the Yankees in a playoff game. It's fantastic.
Wow.
It's cool.
Well, that would get you pumped up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so that's what's going to be going on this week, and giving you guys a little bit of a heads up. You can be looking for that each week. Follow on Facebook, Instagram. If you don't have the app yet, Miss Amy was putting together some graphics for us today. They'll help you have the instructions for how to get the app, how to get notifications through the app, because you can actually set it up so you get notifications just for student ministry if you want to, so you don't have to filter through everything. And then, that way you can kind of follow along on there, because we're going to be putting a lot of our stuff out on the app actually as well.
Yeah, we're going to try pushing the app as much as we can, so you want to make sure you download that.
Yeah, and what we're hoping is during this time we kind of have some extra time to build out the app and make it more of what we want it to be. So go ahead and get it so that you can utilize it as it's getting built out. Okay, yeah, somebody asked for Wednesday on Zoom, is it going to be just like normal Wednesday? So that'll be kind of, but not exactly. I mean, because you're not going to get to eat together.
Yeah, not going to get to eat together. It's virtual. It's only going to be about a half hour each time.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's obvious differences in actually being together versus getting to see each other and talk to each other. It's like, okay, that's a lot better than not being able to see each other and talk to each other.
Because obviously what we're doing with this on Tuesdays and what we're doing with this on Wednesdays, this is a best option given our circumstances. But this is not a replacement for getting together when we can.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to kind of transition here to getting into the beginning of our new series on the Ten Commandments written in stone. So funny enough, like we've been talking about this for a few weeks at least, if not a month. And then Pastor Bill this last week,
he stole our thunder.
He stole it. So the Ten Commandments. Okay, we've heard about the Ten Commandments. Maybe we memorized them as kids or somewhere along the way. But like, what's kind of the big deal about the Ten Commandments? Why do they still matter nowadays or not? Is it just some ancient thing that we don't really have to worry about?
Yeah.
So we have to wrestle with those kinds of questions. And as Pastor Bill talked about on Sunday, Jesus was asked, okay, so what is the greatest commandment in the law? And it seems like a tricky question because, I mean, God gives these 10 commandments, and then the Israelites had hundreds of laws and other things. So Jesus answers really simply.
Yep.
But he doesn't exactly recite one verse.
No.
Why do you think
he comes close, obviously, with the Shema, but what I was thinking about was kind of how he simplified everything into his answer. With it being tax season, I've never done my own taxes before, and I did them this year, and it took me forever on TurboTax. And I got to thinking about it, I was looking at it, and I saw there's like something like 75,000 pages of tax code. Gosh. And like of all that tax code and that complexity that goes into it, like that's how we often think about looking at the Old Testament and the law and the ceremonial law and everything that is that's tied up in all of the Old Testament law.
Yeah.
And there's always this constant talk about simplifying the tax code. Well, what Jesus did in Matthew when he gave us the greatest commandment is he simplified all of the Old Testament law into loving God and loving others.
Yeah. So this is something that if you've grown up in church, or if you're an adult and you're watching along, you've probably heard this a lot in church talk: is love God, love people, right? That's kind of a slogan. When I was growing up, student life camps had a big thing that they did one year that was all love God, love people. And this is what Jesus said. It's like, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Everything that you have, love God with it. But also love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And the lawyer tries to say, okay, so who is my neighbor? And right now, of course, we kind of have limited access with our neighbors. We may see them across the fence or something like that. But so loving God, we get that. But loving our neighbor as yourself, I think that was one of the cool things Pastor Bill kind of talked about the other day was loving someone else as you love yourself. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing to do because I think it's easy for us to love our neighbor. It's another thing for us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. I think when I heard one of my pastors back in Cincinnati, he told me one time that we often think loving our neighbors is good enough. But God never just told you to love your neighbors. He said, love your neighbors as you love yourself. So if we're getting rid of old clothes and old toys and doing things like that, and we're taking them to Goodwill because it's stuff that we no longer want, well, we look at that as loving our neighbors, which is true. I mean, there's some truth to that.
Sure.
We're loving them to an extent. We're giving them things that they may want, things that they may need. But is that truly loving them as we love ourselves when we go out and buy ourselves new things? And I think there's a difference. There definitely is a difference between loving your neighbor and loving your neighbor as yourself. But we also have to come to the question with who is your neighbor? Is it just people who believe like you? Is it just people who live around you? Is it people who think like you? I think it might have been Tim Keller, said something along the lines of, we have no problem loving other people. It's just to the extent to which we want to love them. And we often only want to love people that look like us, think like us, and believe like us. But Jesus was having none of that. Pastor Bill, when he talked about the Good Samaritan, he said, like, if you took by Jesus illustrating a Jew being taken care of by a Samaritan, that's breaking down in every excuse of racial boundaries, of gender boundaries, of ethnic boundaries, of cultural boundaries that you could possibly think of in order to love your neighbor. Because everybody may not be your brother or your sister in faith, but everybody is your neighbor, and everybody is who we're commanded to love.
That's right. And this idea, I mean, it's so easy for us, like you said, to love the people that are our friends and to maybe even try to love them like we love ourselves. But when we think about that, I think about personality differences and how there's a book called The 5 Love Languages, where this guy talks about how some people really feel loved when someone gives them a gift or praises them with words of affirmation or spends quality time with them. And the way that I do that may be totally different than you or than your wife, my wife. So loving our neighbor as we love ourselves, I think part of that also has to do with, thinking through the intentionality of that.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily doing it the exact same way. So I love quality time. Everyone else must get quality time from me. But thinking through, okay, if I would feel loved by someone spending quality time with me, loving my neighbor looks like meeting their needs and caring for them in a way that they are going to receive. And in a way that demonstrates the gospel to them.
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
Yeah. So as we go into the 10 Commandments, Jesus has these 2 commandments that he's given, and I want you guys to kind of think through the 10 Commandments as 2 parts, because there's kind of a division. The first 4 commandments all have to do with that relationship of loving God. So it's having no other gods before me, making no idols, graven images, not using the Lord's name in vain, and not to remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Those 4 things are going to have to do with how we love God and knowing that we're worshiping the one true God.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so be thinking about, go ahead and read into the 10 Commandments and just start thinking about why is this there, and look at how they're connected as well. One thing you're going to see is this: you can't break any of the other 10 Commandments without breaking the first one. I've heard people say that a lot, because anytime we're breaking one of the other commandments, as soon as we're breaking that one, what we're doing is we're putting something above God.
That's right. Yeah. Anytime, and this is, I think James gets into this when he says, look, if we're guilty of one part of the law, we're guilty of the entirety of the law. And so we've got to, not that we earn God's favor by keeping the law. That's what Paul talks about in the middle of Romans. It's like, look, we can't perfectly keep the law, but what the law does is it reveals to us God's holiness and our own sinfulness, which requires a Savior.
Exactly.
Right?
We're not keeping the commandments. We're not obeying, or we're not living out of obedience for love, but we are living out of obedience from love.
Right.
So we obey because we love God, not to earn God's love.
So the first four commandments, and this is in Exodus 20 for anybody that's going to go and read them. I think they're repeated again later on, but Exodus 20 is kind of like the main passage, the go-to. So the first four all have to deal with our relationship with God. The next six have to do with that relationship with one another.
Other people.
And it gives us kind of like broad guidelines of how to interact. What does it look like to love your neighbor as yourself in some very practical ways, and kind of areas, scopes of. So the most famous one that pretty much everybody agrees about, right? You shall not murder.
Yeah, it's hard to love your neighbor like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So this murdering idea is not just manslaughter or something like that. Jesus kind of gets into this
in the Sermon on the Mount.
That's right. That there's a heart behind the murder, and that's what God's concerned about. The outer action comes because the heart has already been corrupted, already decided to carry out this frustration or jealousy or whatever.
Yeah, Jesus wrecks a lot of them in the Sermon on the Mount when he starts talking about, when he kind of hits on the Ten Commandments, when rather than just the outward expression and the external obedience to the law that the Pharisees were pushing, Jesus challenges them and gets to the root of the law to an extent that the religious elite of the day weren't willing to take it.
So, as we think through the Ten Commandments, I don't want you to just think that this is going to be a series on memorizing the Ten Commandments or something like that. What we want to do is really figure out these two commandments that Jesus gives, and how those 10 commandments inform how we live that out.
And the implications of what Jesus said when he gave us the greatest commandment of loving God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and loving others as yourself, and how the greatest commandment really instructs the 10 commandments and what the Christian life is, what it's about.
So that's what we're going to be doing in the coming weeks with these series online. And if we're able to get back together, we'll continue at Ascend and that lift. And we want to do this in our Zoom calls on Wednesday. So be thinking through some of these things along with us. Like Austin said, go ahead and read the 10 Commandments, because there's more than just the simplified things that we kind of talked about. Read into that, get prepared for tomorrow, and let's come together and start to think through these two greatest commandments from Jesus and how we can start applying that this week.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, read the 10 Commandments. And one thing that I'm going to take a leap and say that you have right now is you have time. You have time available. So other than the 10 Commandments, go ahead and read the Sermon on the Mount. It's Matthew 5 through 7. And you're going to be able to see how what Jesus talks about, what the sermon that Jesus gives in the Sermon on the Mount, how this relates to the 10 Commandments and how he was getting to the root of the issue, whereas most were only trying to obey with this external obedience so they could display their obedience to others.
Right. So we've got to make sure we're not just putting on a face, or that we're not just doing these things to kind of check a box that I've been a good person, but rather because of what God's done in our life, we desire to show the whole world how important God is in our lives. That is to magnify him, to glorify him. I forget who it was that they kind of talked about this magnifying idea. We usually think of like a magnifying glass where you look at something small and make it look big when it's not really, But really, the idea is more of like looking through a telescope at a star that's far away, and what it is you're making your eyes see that more as it actually is, rather than the tiny speck that we see it as. And the world, I mean, especially during this time, is kind of questioning things, considering stuff about life and death, what truly matters. I mean, it's amazing. You can go into the stores and see what's important to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
By what's not there. Toilet paper, apparently. super important.
Yeah, people are going to be confronted and just kind of invaded with this idea of the fragility of life right now. Even if they try to remain distracted by distracting themselves with the endless amount of options that we have, or if they just try not to worry, there's a certain level in which people are going to start thinking about the implications of what is happening right now. And not only that, but that the lack of control that we have, that this disease, this virus that started halfway across the world in another country, has now kept us locked in our houses and schools canceled for the rest of April now, at least.
Yeah.
To show us that we don't have as much control as we think we have. We don't have as much power as we think we have. And if this can happen now, this can certainly happen again. So people are going to begin thinking about that and think about the implications that this has on their lives, that this could have in the future, and will probably lead to them thinking about, or at least asking questions on, what does this all mean, and how does this affect what I think about God?
Mm-hmm. We've been talking a lot at Cornerstone lately about being a disruptive witness, and one of the ways that we're able to do that, especially during this time, is like loving others in ways that are very practical, and in actually applying the things that God tells us to be through His Word and follow in obedience. Like you said, not because we're trying to earn God's favor or because it's something that we should do, but rather because God's loved us so amazingly that we desire for others to see Him as He truly is. And the Ten Commandments show us who God is. They reveal His holiness and our own brokenness. And so it can lead to some great conversations with others about sin, about redemption, all of those kinds of things. And that begins, we first have to have knowledge of it. We first have to gain that, and then we have to internalize it so that it becomes part of who we are, and then we live it out before others. All right.
Yeah, so I know everybody kind of reacts to this different, so I just want to tell you guys, like, don't panic, don't freak out. I know everybody kind of thinks differently in situations like these. Don't go out and be reckless. God's given us wisdom during these times to be able to exercise that. Listen to people, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer. These are things you should be doing anyway. So don't go out and be reckless and be stupid or anything like that, but use wisdom. But don't panic, guys. God is sovereign. God knows what's going to happen. God is in complete control of this. This is not outside of His control. This is not outside of His plan. This is something that He is seeing over. This is in His hand. He has this. And as Christians, we have a peace about us that we can rest knowing who is in ultimate control right now.
Yeah, and that no matter what happens to us, that God holds us, He sustains us. That the things that we believed 4 months ago, about who God is when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, we have to remember those things when we are in the midst of that, because the theology matters, right? That's why we study, is so that when we're in that time where persecution comes along, that we stand confident in God. When the opportunity comes to share the gospel with someone, that we've done the due diligence to internalize the gospel so that we can share it.
Which relates back to what we were talking to. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. So not just how you feel, not just what your affections are towards that time, but also what you know. It's a holistic faith where it's your heart, which is the center of your spiritual life, your will and your character. It's the soul, which is how you feel, what your affections are after, but it's also your mind, what you know. And so in times like these, I'm an introvert. I do like to be alone sometimes. I like having my alone time, but I like it on my own terms.
Right.
I don't like being an introvert and being alone when people tell me I have to be alone.
That's right.
This is
now I don't want to go out.
I have just been living under a cloud of gray for the past few days, and it's like it's killing me right now. But in those times, even though like I'm not feeling it and I'm not on a spiritual high or anything like that, knowing the theology, knowing the confidence that we have in God, knowing God's promises, this is what sustains us.
Yep, absolutely. So those are a few things to get you started as we get into this series. We'll dive in much deeper as we go week to week on the different commandments, other places in the Bible that help us to better understand those commandments, because we got to remember there's thousands of years that have occurred in totally different cultures that are going on. So when we read some of those things, they can be misinterpreted. Like we were talking about murder.
Yeah.
Sometimes people will interpret that as "you shall not kill," and so there's some discrepancies then in what. Okay, can I serve in the military?
Yep.
Can I? What if someone's attacking me? Can I defend myself? So there's a lot of different implications, and we have to do some careful study of these commandments, so that we're really getting what God's after, so that we can please Him with our lives.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that's going to be it, I think, for tonight. Each week, remember, we have the weekly schedule posted out onto the Facebook page, so you can download that, copy it, whatever, refer to it. We'll pin it at the top of the page. We'll put it out on Instagram as well, so you can see what's coming up. Make sure that you like the Facebook page. You can subscribe here on YouTube so that you get notifications whenever we go live, just as a reminder. And then get on, doing the things each day. It'll be cool. We're excited about it.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
All right. That wasn't bad.
Can I read the comments? Was anybody saying anything, or just
A
showing
little
who's
bit.
watching it?
There's phone jam.
Christian Brady. What is that? Where's phone jail?
Yeah. Yeah, do that.
You gonna do some box jumps for us? Ugh, I hate box jumps. Christian Bruni out there answering questions for us.
Yeah.
He's the moderator. That's funny. Christian Bruni answering everybody's questions.